Function, pumping and dumping, manipulate the market, flooded from the darknet, flooded from the deep web, keep it a secret, every exchange got the nerdy brains trading on the frequent.
Okay, so got the audio going here, just double checking. Okay, and just give us a moment. We're just making sure the audio comes through on the stream. If we're also coming through on the stream here, let us know and make sure we're all good. Okay, yeah, audio seems to be working even though the QR code still doesn't, because I've been working on it. Hi everyone out there, all on the interwebs who are currently watching right now. Why is there a weird... it's funny that my eyeballs are wigging out considering what today's episode's going to be. So anyhow, who am I? I'm known as Sidepocket on the interwebs. I know, weird name, but it's my hacker handle. You heard that right, hacker handle. As our first instant reward goes up, you can go to get.instant.com or scan that QR code or enter that little code in, earn some free cryptocurrency while we're watching, and it's just a cool way to earn some cryptocurrency while we're watching, and it's not a scam as far as we know, so yay for that. But anyhow, I'm known as Sidepocket. I'm one of the two co-founders of an organization called DCG 201, formerly known as DEF CON 201 and DC 201, as our name implies. We are one of the many, many DEF CON groups across the United States and across the world. Hi there, Christo. Welcome to chat. We're particularly, as the 201, that's the area code describes, we are in New Jersey, particularly Jersey City, New Jersey, or Jersey City, New Jersey, if you don't have the accent. And if you want to know more about us and that, we're going to be announcing on Monday our details for our upcoming meeting. In person and online on December 17th and all of that, you can go to our amazing website that Sir Sellon and Commander have been working on, that's two of our members, at defcon21.org. You can also go to dcg201.org or dc201.org. They all go to the same place. You could get details on all about us on that. We're also all over the socials of medias. We are on... Sorry, I just blanked out there. We are on Twitter at DEFCON21NJ and also DEFCON21 on a multitude of things, such as Instagram and GitHub and the hostducks.social on Mastodon. And if you want to know more of those, not only can you go to our website, but here's also the master list of everything streaming. Before I continue on, and I will bring this up later. Yes, we are still raising money for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Unfortunately, does not take cryptocurrency, this charity, but we're going to kind of get into it. This is going to be one of those like policy lecture episodes, so we'll get there. But we are trying to raise money for this organization. They are an amazing charity organization who takes donations and distributes that money evenly through multiple hospitals across the United States and Canada, focusing on pediatric centers and children's hospitals, which were already understaffed, underfunded, and under-equipped and under the thumb of many politicians. It was even worse during the plague. So it'd be amazing if someone donated like $20 or $50 through Tiltify, which is our third-party thing that we deal with charities, so that way we're not a pump and dump scam. That's the trusted resource. But if you only have $1 or $3 or $5, every bit counts. We got to $278 actually because of a couple of $3 donations last time, even though Fee One Dead has donated the highest at $69. Nice number there. And there's multiple ways if you want to donate. And also note, even though we're trying to raise $600 before January 1st, even if we don't meet our goal, all the money that you donate will go directly to sick children in need. So don't worry about us meeting goal. If you want to donate and you're on Twitch, you can scroll below. There's a little Tiltify widget where you can donate without having to open a tab or kill this live stream. There's also a QR code that does work when it wants to. I'm trying to fix that. And last but not least, if I can do this here, because I copied the wrong thing, I'm going to put the URL directly where you can donate in chat. And when you donate, in the same vein as when you also like and subscribe to us on Twitch D Live or YouTube, we get notifications for that. And particularly if you donate even like $1, I worship you and cheer you on the entire stream. Last but not least, we also have a couple of other streams we're streaming to. So in addition to liking and sharing, subscribing to us on Twitch D Live and YouTube, for all the people who are watching us on Facebook, we're sorry for you. We try to. Sometimes we're on platforms not because we like them, but that's where the people are. There is a way you can chat with us, but you kind of get to be your own hacker. Like you have to essentially hack Facebook in order to get it to work. And I'm posting a link right now, the URL you can go to that will allow you to chat with us if you want to chat with us and you're watching on Facebook and you can't get nowhere else. Like, I don't know, maybe if you're in like India or Montana or something. Anyhow, let's get into the meat of the show because we have a lot to talk about today. Welcome to Crypto Barons. This is one of my 2 shows besides Master of Unlocking. I do this show the 2nd and 4th Saturday of the month, which is going to be weird because that means the next episode is going to be on Christmas. And so that's going to be, I have an interesting thing for that one, so that's going to be nuts. But this is the show, if you haven't noticed, because we're streaming in all the cryptocurrency channels right now, where we talk about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies as technologies. Yes, sometimes we get into the bit of finance, we get into community stuff, but a lot of the times we are looking into like, hey, do they have a wallet? Are they open source? If they're open source, can we see the code? What are they doing? How do all these techniques work? What's the math behind all of this? Things like that. Today, however, we have a very crazy topic because, unfortunately, because this thing is not open source, we're not going to be looking at code today. So I apologize if you were looking like the past couple episodes where I was just literally hacking and losing my mind. We're going to be doing something kind of more important where we're going to be looking at a cryptocurrency blockchain platform that we're looking at its policies and its ethics because it kind of ties into the hacker ethos that we have here at TCG 201. And I don't want to prematurely say anything, but I will say that I think just by looking at what it is alone, this really does look like a 1984 George Orwellian The Matrix type nightmare. Yes, the stream has started. We're actually getting to it now, and because I don't want to keep our guests, because we have special guests today, I'm going to flip over to the other screen. Thank you, Beauty, for checking in with us. Now I'm going to unmute myself. Hello, hold on, I got a message here. Yes, we are starting. Hello, you guys out there. We have 2 awesome guests. Could you please introduce yourselves for everyone watching on the stream?
Yeah, my name's Key. I work at the Oxen project. We develop the session messaging application. If you're familiar with it, I'm the CTO over at that project. So yeah, nice to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Albert Cahn. I'm the Executive Director of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project. I'm also a visiting fellow at Yale Law School's Information Society Project and the Information Law Institute at NYU Law School.
I'm going to be juggling 2 mics. This is going to be crazy. So I'm going to do a brief introduction here of what exactly we're going to be talking about, and this is just going to be like a talking. We're going to be nitpicking this to death here. We're going to be talking about platform called Worldcoin. This was announced. They tried to build this up silently, but then everyone noticed how much capital they were gaining, and there's a good reason for that because the person who has made Worldcoin is Sam Altman, who was the noted former president of Combinator. I think that's how you pronounce that. Who has funded multiple internet businesses such as Twitch and other sort of big entities, and then also later on founded the OpenAI company in which he's trying to make artificial intelligences for all sorts of different nuts things. Yeah, he's also wonder why Combinator also has funded Reddit and Stripe and got all of those projects off the ground. It's pretty insane. And his latest thing is WorldCoin, which, okay, WorldCoin, that already sounds weird enough, but like, what is this about? And going off his AI company, in a nutshell, he has basically made a blockchain with a cryptocurrency called WorldCoin that goes with it system that uses a physical ocular scanning device called the Orb, which you can see the schematics on the screen here, which basically, in order to generate your wallet account, it scans the biometric data of your eyeballs. In fact, I think there's a little image down here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So as you can see here, the idea is that they deploy all of these physical cameras. They are in the shape of these clear, creepy-looking orbs, and they scan your eyeballs, and they use the biometrics of that data to generate the wallet account. And considering we live in a absolutely surveillance nightmare, as the next instant reward goes off, I can't even begin to think of just all of the headaches and, oh boy, this is a bad idea, and they either didn't fully thought it out or thought it out way too much sort of thing. And I'm just going to give it over to our guests right now because my brain is just full of fuck of what do you folks think about this announcement with WorldCoin?
Yeah, I mean, I had a look in, like, I've been following the project kind of from a distance for a couple of months. And one of the most concerning things, I think, is just the incentive models that have been built for so essentially, like, the WorldCoin creators, like, they're the ones that make the orb, but they sell, like, these orbs, or they provide, like, a contract for these orbs out to just, like, random people who can earn WorldCoin by scanning people's eyes. And the more eyes that they scan into the system, the more WorldCoin the person who has the orb earns. So there's this really, like, perverse incentive to just, like, scan as many people's eyes as possible, like, get as many people into the database as possible. And I don't really know, they haven't really made it clear, like, what it means for, like, children and stuff. Like, how old do you have to be scanned by one of these orbs and put into their database? There's not really that much information online about that. So you're just creating this massive database of biometric data. It's hashed, which is, like, slightly better than nothing, but it doesn't provide much protection. Like, you're just creating this massive database of biometric data that can later be used, to identify people for purposes that aren't WorldCoin.
Yeah, I mean, I think this strikes me as the cross between a bad episode of Black Mirror and a James Bond villain. I mean, going around the world, finding people on the economic margins, exploiting their insecurity to take their biometric data and put it into this just Rube Goldberg contraption of a, crypto platform, all without any of the minimal technical legal safeguards that we would want for something like this. I mean, I was appalled when Amazon started paying people for their palm prints, but this is so much worse. And I just think that, the thing that kind of scares me the most about this sort of thing is I actually think it's kind of well-intentioned. I think this goes into a broader issue we've seen with, people in the development community, people at UN agencies who just assume that you can, do whatever you want in terms of biometrics, in terms of tracking, in terms of all these surveillance platforms, if it's in the name of helping people who are in economic need or who are unbanked or refugee populations. And it really can be a disaster. And it, as we've seen in Afghanistan, it potentially can get people killed. So I'm terrified about the implications of this. I'm terrified what's going to happen when we start seeing, resulting data breaches.
If I may ask, because I actually have to make a correction on it's one of our streams. Everything's going great. I just realized, oh, I forgot to turn off an option. So the browser is going to go away for a couple of seconds, but I think it's important. Albert, can you, for all the folks that know, can you detail as an example of where this sort of biometric databasing going wrong, what happened with Afghanistan?
Yeah, so in Afghanistan, you saw the UN rolling out biometric tracking with Afghan refugee communities that were displaced into Pakistan back in, I want to say, 2002 initially. It was one of the first biometric tracking systems of this sort in the world. And at the time, the idea was, well, you have people who fled a war zone, you have people who don't have a lot of documentation. Let's use biometrics as a resilient counterfeit proof form of ID. And then what you saw in the fall of the Afghan government earlier this year was really alarming reports about the potential access to that biometric database. Biometric database is built up by US intelligence officials, US military officials, the Afghan government itself. And that biometric tracking network falling into the hands of the Taliban. And so suddenly, this tool was being turned on the very people it was supposed to protect and being wielded by the very people who was supposed to prevent from, co-opting aid in the first place. And I just really think it's a enduring cautionary tale that no matter how good an idea biometric surveillance might seem in one moment, you're capturing something that'll stick with people for life. And you cannot promise me that there will never be an adverse impact for the entirety of someone's life.
Key, do you have any follow-up to that statement? Because if not, then I have another question to ask, particularly for you.
No, I think that's a really good point. When you create these databases of, well, Worldcoin is creating a database of hashes of people's eyes, which is not the biometric data itself. It's like a hash of the biometric data, which is a little bit more secure. But you're creating this database of hashes. And then if someone else like walks towards a security point where they get their eyes scanned again, and they use the same algorithm that Worldcoin uses to create that data and then hash it, they will match into that hash database. So if anyone gets access to that hash database and then also gets access to the algorithm that produces that hash, then they can match the person exactly. So like the security protections that they put around this is not very good. And the database that they're creating, a centralized database, which they've admitted to having, is very scary if that gets into the hands of government. You're talking about identification of previously, potentially billions of people that have never had their biometric data uploaded. And a database like that's never existed at that scale of biometric data, I don't think, like where you're talking about billions of people. So yeah, it's really scary. I think the point about like, you could create it with good intentions now, but you don't know where that database is, who's gonna like which hands that database is gonna fall into eventually,
To come off like a complete cynic, but Key, I would push back slightly. I don't think the hashing really does much good at all, because I think the probability, again, you're talking about a threat profile measured in decades. And the probability that you're not going to have someone reverse engineer the hashing algorithm, or that it's not going to leak at some point over the next 50 years, to me that seems like really a small probability. And then with a hash, you don't have, when you take a hash, you're basically taking a very small subset of the data and keeping that as sort of like a fingerprint for that initial scan. And so with this sort of hash, you may not have the data to fully reconstruct someone's iris scan, but you still have enough data to track anyone else whose iris you scan. So it seems like it's protecting against something that isn't a major threat, and really not doing nearly enough to prevent the main threat, which is this becoming an ever-present surveillance tool for anyone who gets their hands on the data.
That's actually a great point, Albert, because one of the points I was going to bring up later, but I'm actually going to bring this up now, is that one of the main issues with biometric data and using those as a reference point for even generating numbers for security, which is the thing I was going to get to in a moment, is that when your password that you generate in text strings gets compromised, all you simply have to do, if you're able to, is start anew and you generate a new one and replace the old one. If someone compromises the data that's formed from your eyes, you can't, I mean, there's ways to do this, but you technically can't change your eyes. You can't change your blood type. That your biometrics are a static standard that you live with for the most part throughout your life. So I didn't even think of the idea of that, because it's not just that Worldcoin does this. If other companies are creating these signatures, and because it's the same biometric, it's probably creating very similar outputs. Even if Worldcoin's not compromised, you could kind of, it's like the same way how you can put in an email and see which databases are compromised, because just because that's on your email doesn't mean it hasn't crossed into other databases. So I didn't even think of that.
Well, I mean, there's a whole science to data re-identification. And quite frankly, like, I'm a former philosophy major. We're getting to the limits of my ability to parse the math in this space. So I'm very cautious when it comes to the ability to prevent persistently that sort of re-identification and to prevent that reverse engineering of the hashing function. But again, I'm not an expert in this space, and I don't want to pretend that I am on that point.
So that's perfectly fine. It's one of the reasons why I'm glad that Key is here, because the question I wanted to ask is, so I have read through a lot of the stuff that they wrote, and first of all, I can confirm, because one of the things I don't like about this whole announcement is that there are just huge swaths of stuff that's left unanswered. It's almost like, basically, since this is technically a business pitch, they left a lot of things vague on purpose, because either they don't want to admit uncomfortable truths, and or they just like haven't thought that far. And what drives me nuts is when you get to let me find the tab. The where are you? The privacy during field testing. You have to click an entirely separate element to bring up all of the information about the field testing, which is more revealing than the main page. So it's like they're hiding extra data behind a page of what they bring up. And when I did look at like this pathetic kind of Q&A thing down here, there is nothing here about scanning, about like age consent, for example. Now, we could automatically assume that maybe they're just assuming people would think, oh, we're just going to match local laws, but you would think that would be stated within their own privacy like guide here that they're putting out for this project. I don't know if anyone had any comments on that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really concerning that I couldn't find any information, like just Googling about whether they scan children's eyes or not. Like, I don't really know that much about like eye scanning, if you can tell like it's a child's eye or it's a like adult human's eye, but potentially they could already have like children's eyes in their databases. And that's what I was kind of talking about with the incentive model that they've created before. Like, they sell these orbs, and then the people that scan with these orbs earn Worldcoin for scanning new people into the database. So there's obviously this incentive to get as many people for those scanners like through the system. And they're not necessarily going to be representing the Worldcoin system as it is to the people that they're scanning in. They might overinflate the financial reward of scanning into Worldcoin. They might not talk about the privacy implications, So you have these people who don't necessarily understand fully what they're getting themselves into when they scan into these systems.
And to kind of bring up your point here, and then we're going to get back on more solid topics, the only thing I was able to find about kids is there is a prolific Twitter user named Max Novenstern, who's been a huge critic of this project. And when he was searching through, like, apparently, like, the information on, like, who were operating the orbs, which we'll get into later, which is its own mess, and who was scanning this stuff in, as you can see when you go to Worldcoin's let's see, it's their launch page here. They have a page for Chile, Kenya, Indonesia, Sudan, and France. And according to the data Max found, I haven't been able to link back, but from what he copied over, it said that primarily children, so under 18 in Kenya and Chile, are the ones that are driving a lot of this project. So it seems like they already have, for as far as we know, like children's eyes in their database, which is already creepy enough. The thing I did want to ask you about, Key, is that so one of the things I did learn from this, and I'm going to play a short video so that our audience will be able to know, but I want you to answer this first. As you said, they're generating data from the image they get from the eyeball. What they claim is that the, let's see if I can actually bring this up on the screen, is that what they end up doing, let's see, how do they do this? Here we go. Oh no, that's the main page. I'm sorry. One of the problems also Worldcoin's website is a lot of their pages look the same, is that they take an image capture and they claim they generate the code from, like, I guess maybe it's like, I don't know, it's like how many rods are codes or how sexy your retina is or whatever, and then they apparently delete the image data. And what they're claiming, what the unique identifier is, they say it's one-way encoded, meaning they're claiming that the encryption method or the data translation method they're using, that you can't take that data string and re-extrapolate it back into what someone's eyeball looks like. And I was just wondering if do you think that's a thing you could do, and could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. They're probably just using a stock standard hashing algorithm. So essentially what they'll do is they'll take an image, or they'll produce some data about the eye, and then they'll feed all of that data through a hashing algorithm, which is essentially a one-way function, which produces a fingerprint of the data. So right now, like, hashing algorithms are secure against, every known attack that we kind of have. Like, you can't reverse them out, the strong ones at least. Hashing algorithms have been broken before, though, where you can produce collisions usually between someone else's data and the hash that was produced by the function. So I think that part, like, is secure. But then you have to ask, like, what is the hash actually being used for? Because if the hash is unique to every eyeball that they scan, then you can just use the hash to identify someone instead of the data itself. So I think Albert was right in saying, like, well, this doesn't really solve, like, the main privacy problem that we're looking at, which is, you're creating this database of hashes. Sure, you're not storing, like, the actual photo of the eye, but because you've produced a unique identifier from it, it basically it has the same, like, weight as the picture of the eye would anyway. So yeah, I don't think it really solves the core issue that we're speaking about here.
Yeah, I really want to emphasize this point, because when you think about the potential harms here, I don't care who has a photo of my iris. I don't care who has a photo of my retina. What I care about is who can use the information stored in those images to track my identity, my location, my behavior, and all the other things that biometric surveillance is used to track. And so with this sort of hashing function, they're treating that image itself as if it's a thing of value, when I think to the vast majority of us, it really isn't. And so it really does seem to miss the point, because as soon as someone can replicate that hash, as soon as they can break that hash, what they can then do is, again, take any other, they can, use that identifying tool as if there was no protection whatsoever. And they may never be able to recreate the image from which that data was taken, but that's not going to really stand in the way of the privacy violations. And, just for the folks who are less familiar with hashing, with the computer science part of it, a hash really, it can be any time when you're selectively taking bits of information from a larger file to create this much shorter or much smaller unique fingerprint. And, like, a very simple version of it would be, like, if you looked at all of the, and Key, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you, like, looked at every bit and byte in a file and said, I will just take every 100th bit and just record the value of that. And now you end up with a file that's, 100th as long, and is created from that original file as a fingerprint for it. And obviously modern hashing is much more complicated than that, but it's the idea is just you're selectively taking parts of the file to construct this fingerprint.
Generally, the modern hashing algorithms, it's not selective like that. You actually take into account all of the data and then produce a hash that, kind of is a fingerprint of that data, but will be a much smaller set. So you could have like 100 gigabytes of data and then produce like a 32-bit hash out of it. And if one bit of the data changes, so like say you had 100 gigabytes and you change like 1 kilobyte of data, then the hashing algorithm should produce a completely different result. So you are taking into account all of the data when you produce a hash, but it's supposed to be irreversible. And there's a few algorithms that they use to do that. It's not like compression though, where you can, have 100 gigabytes of data and compress it into 1 gigabyte of data and still, produce it, like go backwards, and produce the 100 gigabytes of data back from that 1 gigabyte. So it is a little bit different, but I think it has much the same purpose as what you were saying anyway.
And what I want to confer to, and this will be the, I just warning, I'm going to play a video in a moment. It's going to be about 3 to 5 minutes long. So this is where like all the speakers are going to take a very short break, and then we're going to plow through everything else. But just because this is relevant, to tell your point, to both of your points, that this idea of taking a piece of biometric data and extrapolating another separate set of data that then uses user unique identifiers, so you don't need the original image. What I found odd about when they announced Worldcoin was this idea that, and they even promoted themselves, this is some revolutionary thing in terms of that aspect, but in reality, not only is this not new, but Disney has actually been using this for years at their theme parks. And so I just thought, just to get it out of the way, that for those of you who might still be like, what are they talking about, translating images to hashes and stuff, I just want to play a video from a YouTuber who's called, he's known as Rob, but his channel is called Mission to Main Street, and he actually did a very short video explaining how Disney uses their fingerprinting system, which you can opt out of, but they really force it upon you in order to generate your unique IDs for their experience. So I just want to play this video so that I think people have a better idea of, like, they're basically to some degree doing this, but with irises. And then we're going to go into a bunch of topics right after this video plays, which includes a bunch of mess of things, including a lot of privacy people's responses, including Edward Snowden, just more vague ideas and weird ethic points that they try to contribute. You'll see what I mean when we get back, but I just want to play this video so everyone can get on it. And also, real quick, for anyone who's in chat right now, if you have a question while we're talking, ask it. I will relay that to our two guests, or even if it's a question to me. So we love people who are active in chat, but if you're also just here to sit and absorb everyone's sexy voice here and learn new stuff, then as I always say, keep lurking, keep learning. Anyhow, let's see how Disney has been using this sort of thing for years in order to do essentially what Worldcoin is doing with eyes. So thank you to Mission to Main Street for this video. Here we go.
By Disney newcomers who are visiting the parks for the first time, or maybe researching before their upcoming first trip, is why does Disney scan your fingerprint? So today I'm going to talk about just that. How Disney scans your fingerprint, why they do it, and what implications it might have on personal privacy. So if you're looking for the really short answer, I'll say this. It's not to track you or put you in some Orwellian master database. It's essentially a preventative measure to combat ticket fraud, and it's due to the way Disney sells their tickets. You see, Disney wants you to stay on Disney World property for as long as possible. The resort is so large and all-encompassing that every extra day you spend there is another day you're paying them for the hotel, another day you're buying their food, their drinks, their snacks. So in order to incentivize you to stay longer, they price their park tickets so that after the 4th day, each additional day costs less and less. That means that in the end, a 5-day pass, at the time of this recording at least, would cost you $395. But a 10-day pass would cost $445. only $50 extra. Think about that. $50 for 5 whole extra days at the parks. Of course, there are all the extra added costs like the hotel, the food, but that's the part Disney doesn't want you to think about. Now, if you do think about it, there's a pretty simple scheme within that pricing system that makes it very easy to exploit. Let's say I want to go on a 5-day vacation. I could pay the $395 for a 5-day pass, or I could buy a 10-day pass for $445, use 5 of the days, and then sell the pass and its remaining 5 days to someone else at a discount, say $300. Suddenly, I've gotten my 5 days of Disney at a net cost of $145, and some other person is getting their 5 days at a discount too. Everybody wins, except for Disney, and they're not about to let themselves come out behind in this. So how does Disney prevent it? Your fingerprints. Essentially, in order to stop the fraud, Disney needs to link an individual to each cell. More importantly, they need a fast way to do it. Sure, they could match up names on the pass with the guest's ID, but that process is slow, especially when you consider that daily attendance to the parks numbers in the tens of thousands. So fingerprint scanning acts as the biometric used to match your ticket to you, so that you can't turn around and sell it to someone else later on. But how do they do the scanning, and should you be worried about your privacy? Well, as expected, Disney says you should not. In fact, according to them, they're not actually scanning your fingerprint. I mean, they are, but they also aren't. It's weird. You see, when we think about fingerprint scanning, we usually think of something like this: a machine that scans an image of your fingerprint and stores it or matches it to a saved fingerprint in a database. What Disney's system does, however, is it scans your fingerprint and measures 3 points on it. From that, they calculate a unique number that then gets tied to your ticket. What do they measure and what's the calculation? Well, we don't know, and that's kind of the idea. The minute that info gets out there, it becomes that much easier to circumvent the system. Disney then dumps the scan and keeps the number. Every time you use the ticket after that, it makes sure that the number still lines up. That number remains tied to your ticket for up to 30 days after your ticket expires or gets used up. And that's really about it. It doesn't go into some database. It doesn't get used to track you. After all, they don't need your fingerprint for that. They've got magic bands. In any case, if you still find yourself uncomfortable with the idea, you can choose to opt out of the fingerprint scan and instead show a picture ID to confirm that the ticket is yours. Disney obviously doesn't advertise this too much because it really slows down the whole process of letting guests in, but the option is out there. So should you worry? Well, that's ultimately up to you to decide, but personally, I don't think so. They don't have a motivation to steal your fingerprint and store it away. Their motivation is to prevent people from selling tickets secondhand and cutting in on their profits. Sure, a decade ago this solution might have seemed like overkill, but with fingerprint scanning continuously increasing in popularity as a form of biometric ID, it just kind of seems normal now.
Live stream. So yeah, that was the mics are back on. That was just a quick video about how, again, like, you know, everyone thinks because it's probably because it's blockchain tech that, oh my god, like, this is some crazy new thing that they're doing where they're scanning someone's eyeballs, generating a number from it, and using that as your, and we're going to get into this part very quickly, the IDing for the wallet. Like, it generates your wallet based on that data, but not to excuse it, but Disney has been using this for years now at its parks with the same sort of concerns and the same bullish nature to opt into their program the same way this project has. It's just because Disney's not using blockchain and Edward Snowden didn't yell at them yet. Keyword is yet, that people didn't seem to notice. I just wanted to kind of get that out there so people kind of have a better understanding about what we're talking about here, according to what Worldcoin says their project is. Another big concern, real quick, just off the top of my head going into this, is the fact that right now, and this is kind of unusual, apparently they have already deployed orbs and people have scanned their eyeballs to generate the accounts, from what I'm aware. But right now, as I've said before, usually a good indicator to a project's vitality on a in cryptocurrency and in blockchain is the fact if most of the stuff's open source, and you'll be able to see that there is no GitHub, there's no GitLab right now. This is just this website's business pitch, the orb. They claim that later on, I think at least the AI code for the orb will be published, but we don't know how much of this is going to be published out, which again gives questions about the transparency behind this project. And I was wondering, as Key, as someone who's done a open source privacy blockchain project with Oxen, if you might want to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would be good for them to publish source code. I mean, I don't know if they're at that stage yet. They should also publish like the schematics of the orb as well, so that, you know, hardware manufacturers or software developers can look through the code and the hardware and understand what the device is doing. I don't think that obviates like a lot of the other stuff that we've talked about today, though. I still think it's a bad idea, but there are better ways that they could implement this bad idea, I think.
The weird thing about it for me is that the only claim that they've had so far about the orbs themselves, because the orbs are very, apparently there's a picture of this I have somewhere. It's like a, where's this picture? It's so it's so nightmarish looking. There it is. It's this like reflective orb, and I don't think they show it on here, but in the front there's a transparent piece, and there's two like lenses that I guess are either binocular or maybe one's normal and one's infrared or something, and that's what you use. You look into that. You show it a QR code first. I guess that does something with the system, and then you look into it for a little bit, and apparently that, and then it generates that AI, and I guess maybe they email it to you. But I also just find it weird that they're already doing this, even though we don't know how the orbs are built. The only thing they say is that it's not manufactured from China. Like, China's the only evil country. I mean, if it was made in America, I'd be scared to hell. But we don't know any of how these orbs are built. There's giant gaps in their ethics and business plans on this. There are, and we don't know any of the software, and any of the software for the AI that's supposed to be powering this thing, because this is actually artificial intelligence that they claim is being used for the retinal scanning process, but they're already collecting data. That just irks me to high heavens.
Yeah, I need to pause on that claim they made about China. I mean, that to me, the just anti-Asian racism that we see coming into these discussions about privacy, like clearly the Chinese government has, you know, created and deployed a number of horrifying surveillance systems, but guess what? So has the American government. So have government. Yeah, so of governments all around the world, and I think there's this really problematic tendency that we see in privacy discourse to somehow hold up China as a unique threat. And none of this is to excuse the again the grotesque human rights violations perpetuated by the Chinese government, but we cannot claim that the US is on solid human rights footing either. And so, that sort of PR spin from them, combined with the lack of any meaningful transparency, really, we're beyond alarm bells. The entire house is on fire.
I have no idea if he had any follow-up to that. If not, I'll continue on.
No, generally I agree. I think they've said that they won't manufacture in the US as well, which is a good thing. I think they're coming out of Germany. I don't know too much about what the German government's record on privacy is, but I maybe assume that it's better than China and the US, but I'm not super familiar.
I think that goes to Albert's point too, of that, like, while we can pick degrees on different countries, the fact that this is a bad idea kind of being put forward with very vague information, it's already like, again, I don't really care who manufactures these. It's just the fact that this even exists. And something that, which we talked a bit before when we aired the episode, that the truly insidious thing that I feel like is not talked about enough, and that's why I'm glad everyone, where Key brought up the whole thing of scanning children's eyes, is that outside of apparently the deployment in France, there seems to be this huge focus. So let me rewind back. if you read the press material from Worldcoin, you can go onto their website, worldcoin.org, and look all of that up. The pitch that particularly Sam Altman has pushed this as is that, like, apparently the orb is an ease of use thing to generate wallets, and he's kind of pushing it as like, oh, we go to a lot of these second and third world countries, and they don't really have laptops and things, so like like the United States people already don't know how to generate wallets. Why would these people do? And so like the orb just makes it like, all these countries want to get into cryptocurrency, but they don't have like a quote unquote affluent population. This kind of solves the gap with that. But to me, this reads of another, yet again, classic case, but now with a technological coat of paint of essentially exploiting both lower class people of any nation and exploiting, as you can see in a lot of these pictures, minority groups, racial, class, sexual, all sorts of things like that. I don't know if anyone had any comments about that, but yeah.
Sure that the technical argument here is very sound as well. I think even in really quite poor countries, people generally have access to like a basic mobile phone that maybe can send text messages. I know in Africa they're doing a lot of banking through like SMS mobile phone systems, and you can just as easily generate a public-private key pair on a mobile phone. It's not a intensive process. So I don't know if they're really being honest here when they're saying, oh, we're doing this because these like countries don't really have the technical infrastructure to support, people generating traditional cryptocurrency wallets on their devices.
That because I just remembered the exact words. The constant word that WorldCoin echoes in all of their promotional material, and we're going to get into their really sad PDF on this, is that they keep using that this is according to particularly, I just forgot his name, particularly to Altman, keeps referring to this as a philanthropy project, and this is also his weird idea of essentially like evenly distributing wealth, which is like, this is like something I often see with cryptocurrency stuff where, as one of our members put it, all, I mean, kind of pace myself, and then I'll let everyone talk for a bit because this just drives me crazy. One of the things that we often focus on Crypto Barons is there's some really, really good technology uses, and to be honest, so far, a really good one. It's not just because you're on the show, but we really like what we've seen from Oxen and the projects that have come out of that. But we also use this platform to criticize a lot of and there's tons of it, snake oil stuff in the blockchain and cryptocurrency sphere. And one of the things, and I hate to be political here, but a lot the crypto bros see themselves as like, oh, fiat markets are Big Brother 1984, and we're going to go in and be like bureaucrats and like break down the system, and we're anarchists. And the way I view it, and a lot of other hackers view this, is that they're, instead of trying to take blockchain and doing like actual practical things with it, they're essentially trying to fight capitalism with capitalism. But it's they're like fighting with fire with fire, and this is just not working. Again, years ago with fiat stuff, we crapped on a lot of class and racial minorities, and here we're seeing it again in the blockchain sphere, and it's like no one has actually learned any of the lessons, nor do they want to learn. Did I just weird everyone out right there?
No, I totally understand you. I think there's also a lot of like I call it kind of blockchain solutionism, which is like, okay, we have this cool technology, let's apply it to every single field that doesn't necessarily need it to be applied to as well. And let's use it as a buzzword, like in our marketing material. It's the same, it kind of goes along the same with like artificial intelligence as well. Like people are just using these terms to kind of appeal to people's like technological interest. They're like, oh, it's got blockchain, oh, it's got AI.
It's
like
for
that must mean it's a
investors.
good thing, like, yeah, and investors as well. There's so much money floating around in this space that, a lot of the attempts to, push blockchain into the world aren't entirely honest as well. So I think there's definitely an element of that.
Everyone wants to be the hero of their own narrative, and a lot of people are making a lot of money and they're trying to retcon the social justice rationale and public policy rationale for systems that really don't have any proven social utility a lot of the time, but are a really good way of, making money on a speculative asset type. And so I tend to be the biggest curmudgeon ever on this. Like I've written articles saying like the NFT emperor isn't wearing any clothes. I've talked a lot about how I think a lot of these Web3 technologies are really just a Ponzi scheme, and I think there are some really good deployments of blockchain. I think there are some really good opportunities to use these sorts of technologies, but I think the overwhelming, reality we see on the ground is a lot of people making a lot of money off of tech that isn't actually doing a lot of good.
Someone in chat also brought up, don't forget virtual reality as one of those where it's a giant gold rush. And what I'm kind of saying is that we especially for me as someone who lives in the United States, we have this very American a lot view because a lot of these companies, a lot of their heads are from America, where we have what I call the Google problem, in which we're trying to come up, we're trying to use technology to solve policy problems, where it's like in order to solve a policy problem, you need to attack it with policy and politics. And while technology could be an element of of like part of the band-aid, you can't solely use it to do that because it's really easy for policy to just, even with the best intentions, reappropriate that piece of tech, and you're just constantly always back at square one. I don't know if I always have a thing with these sort of things where I weird everyone out when I go into spiels like that.
I agree with you.
One of the things I do want to get into, because this is I think the weirdest thing, and this is actually the thing I'm the least familiar with when I was going into this, is allegedly what Sam and the Worldcoin team I keep wanting to say WorldStar. To me, in my brain, it's the same thing. That they keep pointing to is this article that Vitalik wrote in early 2000s last year, which is called this concept called credible neutrality. And I unfortunately I have not read through the entire thing, but it's the idea essentially of algorithmically trying to essentially use algorithms to make the data in such a way that your default that basically the data forms the policy, and the policy through that sort of manipulation of data makes it as neutral as possible, if that makes any lick of sense, because it doesn't really for me. And that's, I just wanted to bring up this article. That's kind of the gist of, at least that's what they claim it is. Again, I haven't read through the entire thing, so maybe they're claiming it's one thing, in reality it's something else, but I just wanted to bring up this bizarre concept they keep going to, which is credible neutrality, which apparently is using algorithms to essentially even the playing field. So I guess the idea is that even like, I guess the idea is like, I used to work in pharmacy, and there was this thing where I would tell people that when they needed, speaking of IDs, like your driver's license in order to buy like pseudoephedrine products or whatever, that I'm like, even if I try to overwrite it to not use it, it won't let me. And I think that's what thing essentially is, but it just, again, this just sounds more like fluff, or taking something that might be real and repurposing it for your own nefarious needs.
I mean, I want to point to the work of Ruha Benjamin, her amazing book, Race After Tech. She's a professor at Princeton University who's written quite compellingly just about the exact opposite of that, which is how even technically neutral systems overwhelmingly replicate the biases of the society and the social context in which they're used. So, it's not, this sort of neutrality isn't something I've looked at in great detail, but just based off of your description, it seems to fly into the face of just everything we've seen about the real world biases of how these systems are deployed.
I would honestly argue, and I don't know if Key can kind of bring to this point, because I see this in a lot of particularly Web3 and blockchain technologies, of essentially engineers developing things in a vacuum. I call it the Google Stadia problem, where my running joke about Google Stadia and why it flopped is because they basically the engineers made themselves their customer base, which completely flies in like the face of like what people who play video games actually want from something. And so there's always to me that element that a risk you can run into making a project, no matter how well good intention, of how like you conceptualize it because you're engineering it, and like what are the actual real world implementations and implications of what you are building.
Yeah, I think the point that Albert made before was really good as well, in terms of, you know, these blockchain systems tend to replicate existing kind of capitalist systems, and actually they tend to actually perform worse in terms of you know, the representation of wealth disparity. For example, like you can look at the Pareto distribution of Bitcoin wallets, and you can see that, you know, it's actually more centralized than most fiat currencies in terms of the top holders of Bitcoin wallets. So yeah, it is pretty concerning that, and I think that kind of actually makes sense as well, because on a blockchain you don't necessarily have, you know, a government to regulate or redistribute through taxes like portions of Bitcoin. But yeah, thinking that you can just invent something, you know, in a vacuum, and it's not going to take on the characteristics of the place that it's invented in or the users that it has, I think is a little naive. Now, I don't think that means that we shouldn't do some of the things that Vitalik is talking about, which is like, you know, being open source, but keeping your design simple and not writing like specific mechanisms into the technology to identify particular groups of users. I think that's all still a good thing to do, but I don't think it necessarily changes, you know, the fact that these technologies are built in, you know, the real meat space, you know, and we can't separate out some of these things that come from the political and real world into the actual technologies.
I feel like they're kind of focusing on like the furnishing of the housing when the foundation is unstable. And I just want to quickly mention, because I want to ask, sorry, my brain just blanked. I wanted to ask Albert a question, but I want to get into this bit, which is, unfortunately, I didn't have the foresight to bring up this article. You saw me briefly search for it on the live stream, but there's a really amazing study that a journalist did about about NFTs, particularly the monkey profile NFTs that have been extremely popular. And basically she chewed through all of the sales data. And again, this is supposedly a completely, what do you call it, decentralized marketplace that this is just the data of what people are buying. And what she found out is that basically the profiles that were worth the least because they were bought the least, thanks to the nature of the market, were avatars that were minorities, of people of color, and women. And I think that's a great example of how, again, where it's like a lot of people are like, oh, just decentralize it and leave it up to people. But, you know, most people, especially on the internet, are assholes. And you'll often end up skewed like that, because at the end of the day, again, this is about policy and human beings, and no amount of technology. Like, the worst updated operating system is the human brain, in my opinion. I don't know if someone wanted to elaborate on that, but I wanted to ask Albert the question of, since we're on the topic of scanning eyes biometric data, you're part of the Stop Spying New York, so I wanted to ask, does this give like uncomfortable echoes for some of these surveillance stuff that you've seen in New York City and across the United States? And do you want to elaborate or give examples of that?
Well, yeah, and just your earlier point, I think sadly the techno optimism of the 90s has been proven wrong so many times that simply having access to technology doesn't solve sexism, racism, homophobia, entrenched forms of bigotry and discrimination. It doesn't, you know, narrow power gaps and create a level playing field. It can be a tool for people who are pushing for positive change, but the technology on its own doesn't fix anything. And in terms of the relevance of iris scans to the work we do at the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, we're focused on state and local government surveillance. We particularly are focused at New York City. And in New York, iris scans are a routine part of policing. That anytime someone is arrested or taken to central booking, they're given one of these iris scans. And so I really worry about how potentially, again, if they're able to, replicate the hashing function or license it, let's say this entire venture goes bankrupt and they're selling off the data or they're selling off the different software. I'd be terrified that the NYPD could then build out their iris database with information from this entire venture.
And the thing is, they don't even have to be liquefied to do that, because, for an example, let me look up what was one of the countries they were in, because this can easily happen in the United States. I just want to pick just some random one that they're currently right now. Something a lot of people are realizing in particularly the market section of the cryptocurrency and blockchain sphere is that, cool, you're now a currency, you're actually like worth value. Now you're going to be hit by regulation. And so, for example, even though right now they're like in their privacy stuff, they're like, we don't actually store the image. We're doing all sorts of stuff to keep the hashes safe and stuff. What is preventing, the United States, if this gets deployed here, France, or Chile, Indonesia, or any country to just be like, okay, we just passed a law in our government that updates like more, we have to absorb more data from countries, and basically are like, you have to give us this data or we shoot you. The problems that we've seen before where privacy companies have databases and stuff, and the FBI raids them because they have the legal paper to do it. So they don't even have to be dissolved for that sort of, regulation to basically force their hand to giving up all the data they're taking.
Yeah, I mean, I with any privacy protections, they're only as good as the willingness of the people with, systems permissions to potentially go to jail rather than comply with a court order. And this is something we've seen a lot with, whether it's national security letters, subpoenas, or full-on warrants. Yes, you could see the government mandating disclosure. A similar example is where we've seen government agencies hijacking the ancestral DNA databases that have gotten a lot of DNA records, tens of millions, I believe, at this point, from people using Ancestry.com and similar services, and then using that to run a genetic profile of a crime suspect against millions of people based off of a single court order. And we could see that with the iris scans here, and I expect that we will.
Unless Key wants to follow up with that, do you? Yep.
No, I mean, I definitely have some views on this. I think the way around this problem is just to not collect the data in the first place. Like, this is kind of what we try to do the most, like, at Session, is like a lot of, messaging applications will want to use your mobile phone number, for example. And that's identifiable information that can track back to you, because most of the time you're needing to use your ID to sign up for a SIM card. By not collecting the data, you like put that ability to, de-anonymize someone by finding out their phone number. You don't even have that ability anymore. So it's not necessarily even about like, oh, if someone comes to me with a warrant and says like, oh, you need to expose all of these users, it's like, I don't even have the data to show you. That's like the best kind of thing that you can do. And that like really links back to this Worldcoin thing, because it's like, I think they should just not be scanning people's irises in the first place. That would be the easiest way that we didn't have any of these technical problems.
Just want to note, for years that literally happened to DEF CON multiple times, where the reason why they had it for years that you could only pay, until very recently you could only pay in cash, is because they've literally had incidences where law enforcement agencies from all different countries would basically ask them to forfeit data, and they're like, even if we complied, we can't complete your request because everything's paid in cash. We literally don't have that data. I do want to bring up, before we go on, just want to repeat again that while I do love streaming this, and I'm so excited that we have both Albert from Stop Spying NY and Keith from Oxen here. This has just been awesome. I do want to remind that we are running a charity donation run all month on these streams for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. I'm going to post the link in chat again where you could donate. If you're on Twitch, you can also scroll and click on the widget to donate. And the QR code kind of works. You have to angle it right, basically, and you're going to see this right now on the screen with the browser. The Children's Miracle Network hospitals, basically, they receive fiat money and they distribute it throughout, my brain just died, distributed out through various pediatric centers and children's hospitals in the United States and Canada who, even before the COVID-19 plague, were understaffed, underfunded, under the thumbs of too many regulations, and so many kids with mental, physical, and disease disabilities weren't getting helped, especially in America where health insurance doesn't exist. It's even worse with COVID-19 now. So we just thought that before January 1st, if we're trying to raise $600 to help essentially sick children, and that, again, it's done through Tiltify. We don't touch any of that money. And even if we don't meet our goal of $600, all the money that's donated, including the current $278.50 currently, will still all be processed and go through to help sick kids early next year. So if you want to donate, again, if you have tons of money and you don't care and you want to donate, that's amazing. But even if it's like $1, $3, $5, the link's in the chat. The QR code scans. Again, if you're on Twitch, we have that widget. Just want to remind everyone, because even if it's just $1 that's donated during the stream by one person, I will worship that person forever, and it just makes me happy to see people, especially computer hackers, giving back, in addition to giving back with code and all the great stuff they do. So, Key, I just wanted to ask, one of the things, and it's not on their website, but I think it's in one of their blog posts that I'm trying to find right now, but I do know, and we're just pivoting a bit to tech here, that the Worldcoin setup apparently is built on the actual coin itself is Ethereum 20, which is a very popular option, and that they're using, I think it's the default Ethereum background they're using, but they are apparently part of their roadmap, and I'm going to check the roadmap moment, are trying to patch to other networks like Polkadot and such, and it sounds like typical development for a blockchain project, but when they're dealing with biometrics and the way they're generating wallets, do you see any issues with that sort of, like, either the type of token they're using or their initiative to expand out to other networks? Do you see any issues with that in the future, or do you think this is just standard stuff?
Yeah, I mean, ERC20 tokens, which is the token standard, or the most popular token standard on Ethereum, is generally, what you'd go for if you were creating a coin like this. So I don't think it's very strange. I know that they are talking about using rollups as well, which is a scalability technology to increase the throughput of their blockchain. So what I expect is that you will be able to represent your token balance on the Ethereum chain, but they'll also have their own kind of private blockchain that's run by some sort of consortium that then backs up in a rollup periodically to the Ethereum chain, which means you kind of get the security of the Ethereum chain, but the scalability of like kind of a private consortium run chain, which is what I expect that they'll be doing. I don't see this as like any of this as being super absurd. I mean, obviously, I think there will be privacy concerns depending on how they construct their zero knowledge rollup system. Ethereum is obviously a public blockchain, so you can see all of the transfers that are happening between different accounts. And if those accounts are linked to a hash of your eyeball, and someone finds out, how to produce the reverse of that, then potentially you could have a system where everyone's balances are public, and whoever they transfer to, is known as well. So that's very concerning if they're going to go down that route. I haven't exactly seen what they're going to do on their consortium chain. Perhaps they'll have some privacy enhancing technologies there, but I think, generally there should be concerns around privacy here, just because Ethereum's not a private blockchain.
And also for the fact too, with cryptocurrencies that we brought multiple times on the show, is people assume that just because you're on a blockchain or that you're a cryptocurrency, that it's like buying a lock, where when most people buy a master lock number 3, they think, because they don't know much about locks, that master lock number 3 is basically Fort Knox, and they don't realize that there's all sorts of levels with this. So they believe the default is the maximum security best option. And so we often have to repeat on this show that just because you are a blockchain or you are decentralized, that doesn't mean that by default, just by implementing that you have the best security. Like, even if you were to go in and secure, you need to actually put in security functions, both programming and policy wise, to make all of this work. Just killed everyone talking again. Running a little bit on Steam here. I think the next topic I'm going to get into, and by the way, if you guys don't mind, even if you have to leave early, I think we're going to wrap this up at it's 9:13 right now my time. I think we're going to wrap this up between 9:20 and 9:30, if that's fine with everyone on here.
Yeah, that's all right.
Awesome. Because if you have to, if you need to leave early because of something, that's perfectly fine. We can say the ending stuff. I just want to let everyone know here. This is going to be one of the short episodes, but I think every time we do a short episode, it's of Crypto Barons, it's always like the most important one. We're like detailing like really important like breaking news or a policy thing or latest code development or whatever. But one of the reasons why, I mean, a lot of people reported on Worldcoin, but one of the biggest things that I guess kind of, I don't know if it came out of nowhere, but it felt like was good old Edward Snowden popped in, and he actually made a tweet that says, and I'm going to read it here, "This looks like it produces a global hash database of people's irises for fairness and waves away the implications saying we delete the scans. Yeah, but you save the hashes produced by the scans, hashes that match future scans. Don't catalog eyeballs." And this tweet has thousands of retweets, like tens of thousands of likes. It really got that. A lot of people who reported on this were actually reporting of Edward Snowden's reaction to this. And even though Edward Snowden's kind of a celebrity now, I just want to ask that the fact that people who are privacy activists, and even I saw even people in blockchain stuff publishing like their concerns about this sort of thing. Like, do you guys see this as a good thing? And like, what do you see of like the implications of this? Do you feel like Worldcoin is now going to like try to answer all of these concerns, or do you think they're going to do like a sad pump and dump survival thing or something like that? Does that make any sense?
I mean, look, I think there's been a huge race with civil society groups, advocates, activists, privacy experts trying to push back and prevent the normalization of this.
That was my brain cell dying that you heard, by the way.
No worries. Because I think there's a real concern. There is a real concern that if you could get a lot of countries on board, if you did have enough money behind this, that you would end up seeing, a lot of people really having their data taken before there was a chance to have the debate. And I think because of the pushback that it's really slowed down adoption. And I don't think that this is something where, I think that because this is being done in part by, as a philanthropic exercise, as misguided a form of philanthropic activity as it may be, I really do think that, the more we make this into a reputational harm, the more likely they are to push back on it and potentially abandon it.
I really hope that that is the case, but I think that often what we're seeing with a lot of these companies, and this happened with Apple's CSAM, like scanning on local devices, that got a lot of pushback and they delayed it. But I think they're just going to do it in like a year's time. Like, so we might be able to delay a lot of this stuff or get them to like think more about privacy. But I feel like ultimately we're going down a road here that we're not going backwards on. People are just going to delay and do this inevitably. Maybe I'm just like really sad about the state of the world right now, but that's how I feel.
Damn, that is bleak. And usually I'm the biggest skeptic in the room. And I would say with CSAM specifically, I don't think that Apple actually delayed. I think they canceled that project. I just think as a face-saving measure, they were refusing to admit that they got their ass handed to them in the press, that they got a huge amount of pushback, and that it was really a threat to their core product and core marketing effort to have people think of iPhone synonymous with privacy, to then implement all of these device side surveillance tools as part of it. So I really do think, and I hope I'm not wrong, that CSAM surveillance on Apple devices is not going to go forward. And I really do think there's a possibility, if we see enough pushback, that this project of Worldcoin is going to get scrapped.
I understand what. Oh, sorry.
Like, I really, really hope you're right.
Sort of, I understand where Key's coming from, where it's like, I think maybe what he's trying to say, because I feel a similar thing, is that like, while we could can WorldCoin because it's a truly terrible idea, that some form of this, whether it's the scanning technology or trying to use biometric data, like incorporating a cryptocurrency or even fiat currency, that this is like something that like we can delay it, but it's some form of this is going to happen. But the positive way that I sort of see this is it's kind of like how, and this probably is going to sound bleak, however, that it's inevitable that all of us are going to die, but I'd rather die in my like 80s than like 3 years from now, which, for example, is one of the reasons why I got the vaccine, is that especially with Delta, and I contracted Delta, and the vaccine helped minimize the symptoms of that. If I didn't have that, I would have died at 34 instead of living into my crumb dungeon years decades later. And like, that's what I feel like we're trying to strive for, is that it's the idea, it's like mitigating damage rather than, it's like the same problem I hate in politics, where everyone wants to, they keep saying like zero crime and zero, when that's like literally statistically impossible. And what you actually need to focus on is minimizing and mitigating bad stuff, not doing this pie in the sky idea of like getting to a 0 point. Like, I mean, you should, that's a nice goal to like, so that way you're like confident in it. But like, I hope, I'm kind of rambling now. I hope you get what I mean here. That I see where Key's coming from, and it is kind of bleak, but it's, I also get the idea that it's like we're gonna keep seeing this sort of biometric uses. Like, people are gonna keep trying it, but I think it's important, to, like what Albert is doing, to um, fight back and to delay and minimize this as much as possible, as well as what Key is doing, which is at the Oxen team, is providing alternatives so that when this comes out, it's not as impactful as it would be if it came out with no opposition. I don't know if I'm accurate in that, but I just want to hear what you guys thought.
Don't get me wrong, like, this is not like a kind of nihilist like perspective, like we should just give up and let what's happened gonna happen, like let it all happen to us, right? Like, obviously I'm working at a privacy technology company and trying to develop softwares that fight against this surveillance, and we're obviously talking about it in public as well. I just feel like, I guess I've seen, and living in Australia, I think doesn't help as well, because like we've seen
Oh, the
government
nanny
in
state.
Australia, like, yeah,
Your
like
video
go
games are scary.
crazy, yeah, go crazy against privacy here. So like, I don't know, maybe I'm just like, yeah, maybe my outlook is bleak, but I think that we do have to fight against it. Like, it's, obviously we have seen benefits to it as well, like fighting against it.
I think, yeah, I think that you just happened to catch me on a particularly optimistic day, because there are plenty of days when I'm looking out at all of the people profiteering off of really terrible technology and all of the government interests aligned with that, and think that it can feel like an inevitability some days. But I do think it's important just to look at the ways that, especially at the state and local level, when you have political mobilization, when you have people speaking out, when you have people taking to the streets and taking action, we can walk back from the precipice of dystopia. But yeah, I think it's sort of one of these things where we have to hope for the best, plan for the worst, and just keep on fighting.
And trust me, I know what it's like, being part of orgs that fight back against this, because never mind all the Electronic Frontier Alliance and other things we're doing at DCG 201. I'll describe this on the audio for any of our two guests who are not in chat, but I literally just came back from the Yes Men, who are a normal like activist global sorry, like a there's a specific term they have, global jamming or something similar. They recently did a museum of all of their sort of protest prank pieces, including this is actually they printed new copies of the fake New York Times that they used to promote this stuff. And so I'm definitely not saying that we should stop fighting. In fact, my argument is that because everyone, companies, governments, powerful individuals are marching towards this, hoping that the masses are so ignorant that they don't care, that it's even more of a need to, and again, I think this is the key, is A, we fight back, but there's two ways to fight back. We can fight back like what Albert's doing directly, where we challenge policies, we get vocal about this, as well as, again, it's like, if it's really easy to see, for example, how awful Twitter is when you had something to compare it with, like Mastodon, and that using an alternative, and I feel like that's why that caught on. Besides the fact that, to be honest, controversial opinion, they also got rid of all of the problems that GNU Social had. But that's what I mean is, that's why I'm happy that you two are my guests here, of like one person who is directly confronting this through activism and legal means, and another person who's developing alternative stuff so that A, we have something to compare against, and two, so that people have options and that they can jump ship from the 1984 thing to another. And thank you, CNMPRFX, we have crazy usernames, for saying this was dope. Thank you. I always try on the show, and my guests are amazing. I don't even know why they bother with all of this. And just want to post one last time for the link that, again, we are trying to raise money for the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Even if you have $1 or $3 to donate directly through Tiltify, which is our third-party reputable org, it's just a great way before the end of the year to help sick kids. So the next topic, I think we're just going to do 2 more topics, and then we'll wrap this up, is, yes, it's all in the letters, is I'm very unfamiliar with Sam Altman as a person. I personally, from what I understand, just see him as yet another Elon Musk. And in fact, I think they did a joint venture at one point recently, maybe for the OpenAI. But I also kind of wonder how much of like the elements of Worldcoin is his sort of push, because what really speaks out to me is that it's not just a simple dummy camera scanning this and indexing it. Apparently, this whole system heavily relies on AI, which already scares me, even if it's open source, because we've seen things which is kind of like, okay, you know how like there's a whole thing where when you get a device, the first thing you try to do is run Doom on it. I've slowly realized that the AI version of that is that when you create an AI, you try to turn it into a Nazi. Like literally, Microsoft literally did this project years ago where they put an AI, directly connected to a Twitter account, and literally within hours it turned into a furry Nazi. Not saying anything bad about furries. I'm saying that like AIs are notorious for just going crap up, especially when given garbage data, because that's what humans like to do. So I was just kind of wondering, like, how much of this do you think this is like Sam's pushing of like his background as being an investor and working in AI, and how much of this is just like the market being unscrupulous, like what the market is?
Sounds to me more of a buzzword like term that they're just using in marketing
Yep.
material. I don't really understand what the use of AI would be when scanning an eye. Like basically what you're trying to do is like take a really high quality picture and then maybe also confirm that like what you're taking a picture of is like a real, like live human, right?
I will say that, and that's a video that I'm going to play after you guys talk. One of the use cases they said for their AI is to prevent things, and these were the specific examples of like trying to scan a dog's eye instead of a human's eye, as well as basically it's for like security and error prevention is one of the examples they gave.
So it's
Yeah,
just
right.
basic computer vision. To me, this just, yeah, this is buzzword marketing. I don't think that this is, I mean, no one can agree on what defines AI. There are all these different forms of systems that are marketed as AI. This creeps me out for a whole lot of reasons, but I don't think of it really meaningfully as an AI tool.
Yeah, I would agree there. It sounds like, you know, they probably just have some protections like on the back end to like try and detect like whether it's a human eye or not. And I don't know, like maybe they use some data that they'd previously collected of human eyes to like classify things, but this is not like a something that's trying to like generate like natural language or process large like sets of data. Like yeah, the definition seems shaky here and more like a marketing thing.
Agree that seems more like a marketing thing, and again, that's why I was wondering how much of this is Sam Sam Altman himself, because I feel like because he ran that AI company or firm, that like they're using that to kind of push this project so that investors think this is like a stable good idea, because apparently that project was a stable idea, as opposed to like letting its own design in of itself stand on its own feet, which, as we've kind of walked through, it hasn't. Before I get into the last topic, again, I said I had one last video to play, because speaking of using AI to make sure you're not scanning like a dog's eye, or making sure like someone's not trying to fake it, because of one of the other side effects of this is that people are already, there hasn't been any field tests yet, but people are already trying to invent stuff in order to circumvent this. And there's one particular, I forget what company he's from, but an engineer on YouTube who posted this short video a bit about it.
Guys, I just hired an engineer on Upwork to help me make fake retinas coins. So all this stuff Sam Altman and Worldcoin's trying to do is actually not going to work. And me and this guy who costs $17 an hour, we're replicating 500 retinas an hour, claiming all the Worldcoin. So we've already destroyed and collapsed this cryptocurrency. So good luck, bro.
Yeah, that was a big thing. It got cut off because of the video, the encoding thing. But apparently, like, people are already trying to bork the actual the generation of the hash process. And that, again, that scares me, that which we've seen happen is that there might actually be a shot, if they're really poorly implemented this, of possibly reversing it, and or any other hacks that we haven't thought of yet. So I guess my last thing I'm going to ask, unless you guys want to bring up any other topics, is that thanks to terrible ideas like this, like, what do you see, maybe not from Worldcoin itself, but like we've covered so many topics, between how much is this a bad idea, database comparisons, local like ways governments could easily like dissolve and take this sort of database, the wrongful use of AI, just everything about it. Where do you see like surveillance and like blockchain security going, based on like, it's, as much as we hate this, Worldcoin did cause a lot of buzz, good and bad. So like, do you hope that people are going to learn like how not to do these sort of things, or do you think people are going to learn all like the wrong lessons from this? Did that make any sense?
Well, I think it's hard to know what lessons people will learn until we see what the long-term response is. I think if we continue to see, broad denunciation, if we continue to see a huge reputational loss for the people who are driving this, and if we continue to see just folks really appalled, then I think that will hopefully be a warning sign to people who try similar things in the future.
Yeah, I agree there.
I guess to kind of specifically more elaborate on that, and this will be an individual answer for both of you, and then we'll wrap this up. Unless you want to bring other topics to focus about Worldcoin that I may have forgotten to cover, as our last inset reward just popped up. One is, so Albert, from your end, being active not just in New York but in a bunch of places with the policy and activism, privacy and security, where are you seeing this biometric surveillance going? And then after him, if Key, you can answer what you're seeing on your end with these open source crypto projects and the Oxen project developing these decentralized private use cases. Where do you see that going from your end? Did I just kill everyone again? Or is there like an audio? Okay.
Well, in terms of biometric surveillance, sort of the landscape, I mean, facial recognition tends to be the biggest, most controversial one, but we see growing proliferation of tools around the country, and people are creeped out. It's invasive, it's discriminatory, it has huge error costs when it gets it wrong, and inevitably does get it wrong, and it's the perfect tool of authoritarianism when it gets it right. So I just think we continue to see, biometrics as distilling a lot of the broader political currents that come with surveillance tech, and these broader debates.
Yeah, and on the privacy projects front, I think there's definitely more desire for projects that are exploring privacy, and trying not to link people to real world identifiers. I think it's becoming more and more common that people have to KYC to use particular applications, and there's definitely a pushback against that. So we've definitely seen our user base grow, sort of up about 450% on the start of the year on user growth. So I think we're going to continue to see that happen. I think the private applications are going to start to creep up on the the non-private ones. We've seen Signal have a huge adoption in the last couple of years as people start to get more clued in about their privacy, and I think we'll continue to see that growth as well.
Before I do the last usual thing I do with my guests, are there any closing thoughts either of you want to do on this subject, or just anything really?
I mean, just generally, I would like try to summarize like my view is like I don't think this data should be collected because it could fall into the hands of the wrong people in terms of Worldcoin. So I think if the founders out there are listening, I think they need to scrap this idea and work out a different way to do it.
I completely agree. I would just say with, data this invasive, this, potentially deadly, there are no right hands. No one can be trusted with this sort of data. And, the first rule of privacy by design is just don't collect this if we don't need it. And we definitely don't need it.
Well, one second, because someone in chat actually pointed out that there's and I guess this is a great way to kind of close with this, that there is a book by Roger A. Grimes called Hacking Multi-Factor Authentication. You can get it in book form, and he apparently did a presentation about this subject of how to bypass these sort of biometric processes as a presentation. So I just posted that PDF link in the chat. I wish I knew about this. I'm going to check this out after the stream. So before I do the spiel of signing out the show, in which what we will be doing is, if you're on DLive, I'm going to be distributing the internal currency there, which is lemons, so you might be getting a bunch of lemons. And on Twitch, stay tuned, because in the next couple of minutes, we will be rating someone else's stream. It might be someone working on a coding project, might be some weird VR big-boobed furry, might be someone sewing something, it might be someone talking about political activism. We won't know until we raid, but we always raid cool people. I just want to thank both Albert and Key from literally on my heart for joining this. This episode went... I mean, I had expectations knowing that both of you would be on, but this has gone way better than I expected, and so what I wanted to ask is... if each one of you could say, like, how people can contact you, and, like, what are some of the current stuff that you're working on.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. Huge fan of the work you all do. So our website is stopspying, stopspying.org. Thanks. Not a very subtle URL, not a very subtle group. We really, are a local grassroots org that's fighting back against the growth of these technologies in New York, but providing assistance to groups around the country and around the world. And please sign up for our mailing list. If you have the ability, please consider contributing. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and the only way we're able to sue surveillance vendors, pass new laws, write new laws, and generally make good trouble for the NYPD is with the support of the public. So if you have the wherewithal, please consider making a donation.
Yeah, thanks for having me on too as well. I think it was a really interesting discussion. Primarily, the application that we're working on right now is called Session, and it's a private messaging application. So kind of like Signal, but I think a bit further down that line in terms of it doesn't use a phone number, and it also underroutes your messages as well to hide your IP address. So if you're interested in that, go to Get Session. It's just GETSSION. I don't know how to spell it properly. Get Session.
I posted it in chat, so they got it.
Yeah, it's getsession.org, and you can download the app there. It's on all desktop, mobile devices. So reach out, and I'm on there as well. If you look up my Twitter or look up my session ID, it'll come up if you go to getsession/K. So you can message me on session or follow me on Twitter as well. I post my thoughts there too. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
And I will quickly say before you leave, Key, no, actually more if we leave, is that just to note of how awesome Session is, well, two things. One, back when I believe this was like in beta and we were having problems with Keybase, representatives of Session during its way early days actually reached out to us to be like, hey, we're doing this thing. We just kind of launched an online beta. You go look at it. If you hate it, rip it apart. Just we want to know what you as hackers think of it, which I thought was flattering. And that Sessions is both listed on privacytools.io as well as their splinter group now from the original team, Privacy Guides, and that right now we're actually looking for a new messaging service. And while I can't guarantee that we're going to use Sessions is one of the ones we're going to try out to see that works, and we're really excited to test it to see if it works for us at DCT 201. So thank you for making this, and thank you all for having for both of you. So I'm kind of speechless right now. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is or our guests can leave chat or say bye or whatever. I'm going to temporarily mute the channel so that way I can end the episode. Let me just do this.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks again.
Awesome. Hackers, we do computer stuff and nothing works. At least for me. So yeah, I'm just gonna end let's mute this. There we go. There we go. Alright, so that was our episode of Crypto Barons. Wow, that was really productive, to be honest. Oh my god, the guests that we had were amazing. Oh, I should also probably mute myself in chat, even if they're not here anymore. I'm going to send follow-up emails to both our guests. Again, thank you, Albert from Stop Spying NY, as well as the Key all the way from the Oxen team making the sessions, communication things. We're going to be testing for our own internal use soon, so we might decide on that. I've been a fan of it, so I hope we check that out. I could do things with my friends on it. I would say on any chat service that you have, no matter how secure it is, to like, if you're hiding a body, just like, well, you're doing something terrible. But I'm just saying, if you're doing something that you think is scrupulous, just don't talk about it in general. I'm not endorsing crime or anything, but I'm just saying, like, if you don't want to know anyone to know that you have a third nipple, I don't care if it's Signal, Sessions, Buyer, smoke signals, handing a hand encrypted note to someone, just don't talk about it. It's like the internet. If you don't want the internet to know something forever, just don't post that on there. That's just a simple thing. But anyhow, that was our episode of Crypto Barons. This was really awesome. And by the way, I would love if someone did like a $1 last minute donations for the Children's Miracle Network Hospital that we're raising funds for all month long, especially considering how awesome this episode went. I'm going to do one last time. I'm posting the link in chat. If you're on Twitch, Live, or YouTube, you can also follow, like, share, and subscribe to us on there. We get notifications for that as well. And even if we're not streaming, you can scan this URL, the QR code. You can click that link. We have it in the description as well for this video. And you can also go to our widget on Twitch, and when we load up the next episode, your donations will instantly appear and we'll cheer you on. So even if we're not streaming, you can donate $1 or $5 to help sick children across the United States and Canada, which is what the Children's Miracle Network hospitals do, including there is a hospital chain called I think they're called the Children's Resource Hospital in New Jersey, and there's 14 locations, and pretty much almost all their funding directly comes from, like, the majority of their funding comes from Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Again, that helps kids who have caught COVID, children who have been in like vehicle accidents, kids that have been born with mental disabilities, who have gone through abuse trauma. We just think it's a great way. Hey, 2022, let's help out kids that have problems, because we're adults and we have problems. Kids shouldn't be going through this either. So just putting that out there. Anyhow, so if you have been on here, let me actually take the headphones off. My crazy hair. If you have been on here, that's going to be the end of our show. Thank you for all tuning in. Stay tuned because actually literally right now, I am going on to provided this. I don't know where this lag is coming from all of a sudden. Did I open something weird that I didn't know about? But I'm literally going to go on to DLive right now. If you're watching on DLive, which is sort of like the cryptocurrency, it's sort of the blockchain live streaming service. I think it's because I have two PDFs open at the same time that everything's lagging. But I'm going to go over to DLive right now, and I'm going to distribute their type of currency that we have a ton of called lemons. So if you're on there, you get a bunch of lemons, which you can actually cash out for real money. So that's kind of a cool thing to give back to thank you for watching, and in addition to the instant rewards. If you are on Twitch right now, also stay tuned because basically we're going to go look up someone who's streaming some cool stuff. They might be doing a cool program. They might be doing leatherworking. They might be lockpicking. They might be just doing uwu stuff. Who knows? And after this is done, you're immediately going to see what they're going to do. So we're going to raid someone else's channel. But that's the end of the show. We do this Crypto Barons second and fourth Saturday of the month. So the irony is that our next episode is going to be on December 25th. It's going to be Christmas. That's going to be the last episode that we're going to have. I don't know if it's going to be Christmas themed. I have some ideas for it. But just tune in December 25th, Christmas Day at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All I can say is that you will not regret watching all the crazy stuff we're going to be doing for that episode. But that's it for me. If you want to see me sooner, on the 17th will be our meeting, both in person and online. This Monday, Tuesday, we are going to publicly post details about that. So whether you're in Jersey City and you definitely want to attend in person for this, especially considering the person who's going to be speaking there and demoing actual hardware and software stuff, as well as, or you can't make it and you want to see us partially stream this remotely, we got you covered. So right now we're going to distribute some lemons on DLive as the last instant reward pops up, and we're going to raid someone else's stream. But whether I see you at the next meeting on the 17th, my other show, The Master of Unlocking, on the 19th at 8 p.m., or to check in for the next episode of Crypto Barons on December 25th, Christmas Day at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you are all safe out there. I can't wait to see you soon. Hope you get that instant reward. Hope you get those lemons. Say hi to the person we rated on Twitch. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for my two guests, Albert from Spying NY, as well as Key from Oxen from the session team for their work. Here's that instant reward. Hack the planet. Dirty Jersey represent. And remember, what can we remember? Remember, if it looks like a bad idea, it sounds like it's a bad idea, no amount of Go programming and solidity is going to make this into a good idea. Just as the Michael Jordan meme goes, stop. Stop, Worldcoin. Stop. Get some help. Okay? Peace, everyone. Enjoy the music as we tune out. Bye. Sorry, we've had a huge ungodly spike in lag, and I don't know why, but we are going to be rating lemons in a moment.